Let us welcome Elisa Walton as she tells us about Henry. Elisa?
Before I even met Henry, I knew it would never work out. We were too different, and he had a bit of a bad reputation. But against my better judgment, I went to meet him anyway. I drove 4 hours down to Roanoke on a freezing February day. And as soon as I saw him, I knew I'd been right. He walked right past me, didn't even give me the time of day. He only had eyes for his trainer and the tennis ball she was holding. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, Henry was a 2-year-old yellow lab who had just failed out of a service dog training program. He needed a new home, and I was a brand new search and rescue volunteer looking for a dog I could train to find lost people. Henry's trainers thought that all the things that made him terrible at being a service dog, like loving to sniff instead of calmly walking by his handler, and way too much energy where he might knock someone over, or loving toys so much that he would do almost anything to get one, could be an asset in search and rescue. There was another part of Henry's background that intrigued me as well. He had spent the first year of his life in the prison pups training program. He had lived in a medium security correctional facility, and an inmate there had taught him all of his basic obedience. I live in a tiny third floor apartment, and I thought, if he could make it in a jail, maybe this could work too. After about a year in the prison pups program, COVID hit. And since they didn't know how that might affect a dog, he was removed from the prison and put into the Service Dog Foundation's kennels. Then he was moved into the home of a trainer, and then a different trainer, and then back to the kennels. And all of this upheaval really took its toll on Henry. He developed dog reaction. He would respond in kind, which is completely inappropriate for a service dog who has to be neutral at all times. It's workable for a search and rescue dog with an experienced handler, but I was not an experienced handler. I hadn't had a dog in 20 years, and I had just started my search and rescue training. And as Henry's trainer walked me through his tricks and how they managed his reactivity, I could tell she had her doubts about me. But she was too polite to say anything, and I was too embarrassed to say that I had driven 4 hours and changed my mind the second I saw this dog. So I figured I'd give it a shot. I had about a month to make up my mind, and then I could always return him if it didn't work out. So I took his leash and his bag of things and walked to my car. And a strange thing happened as I walked to my car. After completely ignoring me all morning, Henry realized she's not a nobody. She is my person. I have finally made it, and I'm going home with a human. And then he proceeded to show me why he had completely failed as a service dog. Knowing that I didn't really know what I was doing, he started pulling on the leash to smell all of the amazing smells he hadn't been allowed to smell before. I had been told that he would calmly lie on the floorboards of the back seat in the car, and that's where I put him. He immediately threw himself between the two front seats, wagging his entire body and trying to lick me in the face while I frantically paged through the list of commands that I had been given. I found the magic word, which was settle, and now that I knew what to do, he immediately settled. He did not move a muscle for the rest of the trip. We got home, I set up his crate, fed him, took him for a walk, all the while dealing with his tremendous exuberance and love of life. And by the time I put him in his crate and went to bed, I was exhausted. And that's when I heard a strange noise, crying. I thought, he's a 2-year-old dog. He's been trained as a service dog. He wouldn't cry for no reason. I better take him out again. So we went out 10 p.m., midnight, again at 3 a.m. I tried sleeping on the couch next to him. I tried talking to him. Nothing worked. And by the time morning rolled around, I was done. I would have jumped right back into the car and driven back to Roanoke, but I was too tired to do it safely. So I muddled through. We went on lots of walks, which were difficult because Henry was still quite reactive. He was reactive to the barking, growling dogs, but even more innocent ones where I let my guard down. There was the cute puppy that just wanted to say hi. He lunged and growled. There was the happy, bouncy poodle. Who could possibly be threatened by a poodle? Henry. Henry was threatened by a poodle and growled at that dog too, making me look like the worst owner in the world and him look like a little bit of a psycho. It wasn't any easier inside my apartment either. He was so anxious that he trailed me everywhere. I felt like I had invited a stalker into my own home. And even when he pretended to sleep, if I dropped a spoon or rustled a newspaper, he would jump to all fours, waiting for his next command. And the dog hair. Dog hair was everywhere in my life. It was even floating in the air somehow. But despite the challenges that Henry presented to my life, he slowly started to worm his way into my heart. I started to enjoy having a shadow. When I'd finish my day's work and yawn and stretch, he would sprint to my side and do a big stretch and yawn, trying to convince me that it was time for a walk. He also really wanted to be good. I started teaching him new tricks, like changing to the other side when we saw a dog coming towards us. And we practiced off-leash recall for the first time. He had never been off-leash as a service dog. And no matter how far away from me he was, the second he heard his name, he would pivot around, lock eyes with me, and sprint, skidding to a halt about a second before he would have knocked me over, and just delighted with himself. He also did wonderful on his search and rescue test, which allowed him to start training as a search dog. And throughout all this, I saw that Henry was blossoming, being given an opportunity to do what he was meant to do. Looking back to that day in Roanoke, I still think it was a little crazy that I took Henry, because my life at the time was not set up for a dog. But Henry being Henry, he bulldozed his way in, shaped my life to suit him, and in the process made me a lot happier as well. I laugh a lot more, I spent a lot more time outdoors, and I've gone a lot further in search and rescue than I would have without him, meeting all sorts of new people. And he's also reminded me that if you keep trying at something and you just aren't any good at it, it may be time to try something new. Transmogrify yourself, where all your weaknesses become strengths, and you go from being a liability to a superstar. Madam Toast Leader, over to you.